Hey, Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Grow, Lead, Go. This is for you if you want to grow with what you're interested with, if you want to lead others better so that you can go and do what you're called to do. I think there's no better way to start off 2021 with someone that I really look up to. I owe most of what I know about leadership to him. He's a phenomenal preacher, a great wakeboarder, and a great basketball shooter. Connor, we give it up to none other than my senior pastor, James Aiton.
Thanks, Paul. That's the weirdest intro ever. I'm an average wakeboarder, and I'm an average basketball shooter.
You have a really great form, though.
Got great form, but I just can't get it in the hole.
No, you do get into the hole a lot of times.
No.
But welcome to this podcast. This is our personal growth and leadership podcast.
Great.
But before we start, I just want to honor you, Pas, for leading us so well through the crazy year of 2020. Wasn't that crazy? Was it?
It was insane, and I feel like it's not over.
Yeah.
I feel like even though it's a new year, it's still going. We're still in the middle of it. Yeah.
We have we hope and believe that 2021 will be better.
Yeah.
But we have no control of it.
Yeah.
But we can have control is that we can get better
Yeah.
as individuals, as leaders, as a team. And so I want to talk about that for this podcast. And you have done so well. You lived your life where you're so intentional with just being a better person and being intentional with who you are becoming. But can you talk to us a bit about how important it is to have a growth mindset? Like what would happen if you have it or what won't happen if you don't?
Yeah, great question. Every time I do an interview with you, you never give me the questions beforehand. So it's interesting. So I don't know what these questions are, so we'll just roll together. I think a growth mindset, you can see easily between people that have a growth mindset and those that don't.
That's right.
And it's not some weird thing like, is it hard to see? It's actually easy to see. And I think it just comes back to, do people want to become a better version of themselves tomorrow? Do you want to be better tomorrow than what you were today?
Amazing.
And the way I see it is that if you're not growing, you're actually going backwards.
Wow.
Because other people around you are going to grow, and they're just going to keep growing and growing and growing. And it's never a competition. It's not competing with them. But if you're not growing, like you are in fact going backwards. I mean, you look at any technology company in the last 20, 30 years,
Exactly.
and those companies that didn't grow, they had a great product, but they didn't grow with the time. A perfect example is Nokia or Nokia, however you say it,
Super
wherever
sturdy.
you're from. They were leading the world in phones.
Yeah.
Everyone had one.
Yep.
I had one. Like everyone had a Nokia
3310,
phone. Yeah,
5210.
everything, right? And what happened is this: they didn't grow into the smartphone arena, and they lost it. And they lost their market share. They lost their influence, even though they had a great product.
Yep.
And so I think, for us as people, for having a growth mindset, it's if I could simplify it, I want to be better tomorrow than what I was yesterday. And sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm worse tomorrow than what I was yesterday. But the idea is you're constantly going forward, constantly heading in that direction, going, I want to be a better person tomorrow. I want to be better in who, for me personally, I want to be a better leader. I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better father. Than who I was yesterday. That's a growth mindset. If you don't have that mindset, then people think, well, I'll just plateau. But the reality is you never plateau.
Yeah.
You end up going backwards. And that's just the reality of it. I mean, one of our staff guys asked me that question recently, I think about 4 or 5 months ago, like, how come you're pushing, how come you're growing? We changed the set of our church.
Yeah.
And he goes, why did you change the set? Like, I really liked the old set. Did we need to change it? I went, and that was just that simple response was, well, listen, if we're not growing, we're not staying plateau. We're actually going to go backwards.
Exactly.
And so I always love to push and to grow myself. And I don't push anyone more than what I would push myself.
Wow.
Like, I push myself the most. As a leader of people, I don't expect anyone to grow more than what I'm growing myself in my personal development.
That's awesome.
And so I push people, but it's because I'm pushing myself as well.
Amazing. You are a proactive leader. That's just who you are. You're always pushing, always growing. I heard Craig Rochelle say one time that if you don't prepare for growth, you prepare for decline. which is
Yeah.
exactly what you were saying. But
Yeah.
in your leadership journey,
He
Bas,
says it better though, because it's Craig
it's
Groeschel.
Craig Rochelle.
Yeah.
He's the leadership guru. But in your journey, Bas, what are 3 things that was instrumental to your growth in your journey growing up?
3 things instrumental. I think I think it comes firstly to your own personal hunger and drive.
Wow. Yeah.
If you don't have, I mean, this is a leadership podcast,
Yeah.
right? So this ain't just for everyone. As much as I feel like everyone has the ability to be a
Listen to
leader
it. Yeah, totally.
and to grow as a leader, but if you don't have a drive, like if you've got to be pushed to do something, you're never going to lead much.
Wow.
Whether it's in a church or a business or even at home.
That's right.
Like if you got to be pushed by your spouse, you're not leading at home. And so I think the biggest thing is you got to have a hunger and a drive. For me, you know, my hunger and drive is I'm super passionate about what I do. I love the local church. I think the local church is the hope of the world.
It is.
And so for me, my passion and drive is an eternal one as well, which makes it a little bit easier. I do love my job, you know, so it's not just I want to be the best. You know, my thing for our church, I want our church to be the biggest church in the Philippines and have a huge footprint around the world and do all these amazing things, not out of a competition mindset of beating anyone else, but out of I just want to reach as many people for Christ as possible.
Yeah.
And so I've got a hunger and a drive that I don't need you to tell me
Wow.
to get up in the morning. Like I don't need you to and listen, hey, it's not like that all the time. Like there's definitely moments
Yeah, totally.
in anything. You know, one of the things I always love talking about in leadership is the full spectrum and the reality of leadership. So it's not just like I've got a hunger and a drive and I'm driven
pumped.
and I'm amazing, right? There are some days where I'm like, Lord Jesus, I don't want to do what I'm doing. You know, you know, there's days you want to crawl up and hide
Yeah.
in a cave because you feel the weight and the burden of people.
Yeah.
You know, you really feel that way, and it's like you just want to run away. But again, that's what you know, separates great leaders from average leaders or horrible leaders, is that some leaders have just run away. They have taken the easy way out. They've taken every leader has stress and pressure. Maybe this is number 2. You know, you asked for 3 things. I probably learned to handle my stress and pressure well.
Right.
When I was younger, I didn't. When I was 22, I ended up having an emotional, I don't want to call it a mental breakdown, but it was close to it, but it was definitely an emotional breakdown.
Burnout? Yeah.
Yeah, but it was more than a burnout. It was like I'm done with everything. And the reason why was because I was working 70 plus hours a week in 3 different jobs. 2 of those jobs were highly emotionally draining. I was working as a youth care worker with a highly volatile child that physically was abusive, that I had to physically, you know, protect myself. And then the other one was I was at church, which is just a highly emotionally taxing job. And so I was working 7 hours a week. I'd stop reading my Bible. I'd stop praying. I was about to get married. The pressure of life, the pressure of ministry. And something flicked inside of me, and I just left. I left where I was living. I was living in a place called Brisbane in Australia, and I got on a plane, flew up to Cairns, which is like a 2-day drive away, and hung out with my auntie. Had a huge God time in that, and God really drew me back. But I didn't handle my stress and my pressure well. So that time really taught me a couple of things. Number 1, from a spiritual. So for those listening from a spiritual aspect, it taught me how important it was to just read your Bible and pray. So many people want deep theological teaching and spiritual truths, but honestly, the most simple spiritual truth that I can give you is that if you want a deeper relationship with God, is read your Bible and pray every day. That's what fills your well.
Totally.
From a practical point of view, I learned how to handle my stress better. You know, I learned how to handle, you know, going through hard times. And when I was 22, actually about 4 months after that happened, the woman I was married to, my wife, she passed away and she died, and horrible moment. Wouldn't wish it on anyone. But what that did in my leadership, in a weird way, is that I compare every stressful situation that I face in leadership to waking up in my bed and giving my wife CPR and her dying in my arms. I know that sounds hectic. I know it's heavy, but hear me out, is this. So what throws other people doesn't throw me as much because I'm like, that's not as bad. You know, like there's not a lot of worse things than waking up in your bed and giving your wife CPR and her dying, right? So for me, what that did is it instilled something inside of me, a steel in my backbone, where I now almost, subconsciously, not even realizing it, compare things. So, Kate, my wife, always gets annoyed at me. She's like, how come you're so relaxed? You're so chilled. You're so, because she'll react about something.
You're a rock.
Yeah. And honestly, it's because it's like, well, when you've lived through something, and you've done it, you've lived through the death of your own father, and you've got that same sense of stability in your life, in that when you live through something as and yours was very it was a suicide, right? Which I know you've talked about.
Yeah, totally.
That's tragic. That's not just my dad died of cancer. That's tragic. and confronting. So when you're faced with we're short on money this month, or we got something, you're like, yeah, that's okay. I've already lived through some pretty hectic stuff. We can do this. If I got through that, we can get through this.
Exactly. That's a great thought.
Yeah, and I think, God can use anything.
Yeah.
God can use any pain, and you never wish it on anyone.
Yeah, totally.
And it's not like, to be a better leader, I got to go through something hectic like someone dying. No.
But the reality
is, though, I think every great leader, really great leader, they'll tell you their war stories.
Yep.
They'll show you their scars.
Yeah.
And every great leader has a scar.
And you always talk about the greatness of your influence will be defined by your ability to handle pain.
Yeah, your pain threshold.
Yeah.
The greatest leaders in the world have the greatest pain thresholds. And so, that's it for me. So your pain threshold, that's what I grew. So what am I up to? Third?
Yeah,
so
third.
What was the first one? I've forgotten where we were.
First one is...
What did I say?
Leadership.
Growing. I don't know.
Second one is
what's the question again? What was it?
Three things. First one is hunger.
Oh yeah, you got to have a drive. Yeah, that's right. And then the second one was that. So the third one, what's the question? Three things in leadership
that really helped you grow in your leadership journey.
I get around the right people. The old saying
Talk about that. That's really good.
saying is that leaders are readers. Right?
That's right.
I am not a reader. I am a horrible reader. And so I like the other saying, which is leaders are learners.
Come on.
Because you can learn without having to read 1,000 books. Now, I know you like reading books. I don't. The amount of books I've started and then stopped is too much. I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, I remember I asked you, what book can you recommend, Pastor James? And you're like, Culture of Honor.
Yeah, the Bible. No, I actually hate reading.
That's amazing.
I hate reading.
I think that just that thought sets people free, because a lot of leaders can be pressured that, I'm not a reader.
Yeah.
Maybe I can lead.
You know what? And listen, I read a lot when I was younger.
Learned. Maybe
I didn't, but here's actually what I do. I like reading. Here's the two things. Sorry, let me say this. I hate reading full books.
That's right.
But I like reading articles.
Which you send to us and to me all the time.
Shorter.
Yeah.
I'm like, I love that company that takes a 200-page book and puts it into 10 pages.
Is it Blinkist?
There's multiple ones. I had someone used to send me stuff all the time. I'm that, like, just give me the headlines. Give me the headlines. I don't want to go through all the crap.
So when you were in high school, you've never finished a book report?
Oh, no. I read books when I was younger. I used to love reading novels.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like, I'd read a lot of novels. I grew up reading novels big time. Book reports, I would try and watch the movie.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I do.
Let's not talk about my schooling. But for me, the two things is actually reading articles, but more than that, it's actually spending time with leaders. Spending time with men and women that are especially older than me has shaped and formed me more than any book could.
Wow.
I think
It's true.
And I've gotten to sit with authors, and to be blunt, you know, it's a heck of a lot better to sit with the guy who wrote the book and talk about life and ask questions rather than read the book.
Totally.
As much as reading the book is
It's
good.
amazing.
And the reason why we read the book is because we don't get the chance to sit with the author. But every older, especially in my field of ministry, every older pastor that I get the chance, I sit with them and I always ask them, what was your mistakes?
Wow.
What did you do that you regret doing? How could you have done it better? How could you have been a better husband if it's to a man? How could you be a better parent? I love those questions.
Wow.
And you'd be surprised, especially older people are actually quite happy to talk about their mistakes, especially when they were younger.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you asked me about my mistakes I made. I'm about a decade older than you, and I'm quite happy to talk about that. And so that's really shaped me in my leadership journey, has been the hunger and the drive. To wrap it up, got to remember what I said, the hunger and the drive.
Ability to handle stress and pressure.
Your pain threshold, as a leader. And then, which kind of goes back to that, am I growing? It's surrounding yourself with either the right books or the right people. But I would say, you definitely need people, though.
Yeah, exactly.
You could get away without books, but you can't get away without people.
That's right.
You need people.
I especially loved what you said. And the second bit.
I'm just going to have a drink from the world's biggest water bottle.
Go ahead. Lock and Luck. Thank you, Lock and Luck.
Lock this down, baby.
Shout out. I love your second bit that you said, because I really think that your leadership influence and your journey in leadership, it will be defined by your ability to get up, to get back up when you fail. What can you say about that?
A great line I heard even just the other day by a great pastor called Phil Pringle is that you need to learn how to fail forward.
That's good.
And he actually said it. It's not my words, it's his words. And he's in his 60s. He's a legend. Started the C3 movement and a very well-known pastor around the world. He said his worry about this current younger generation is the inability to get up after being knocked down. And I'm not one to just rag out on millennials or anything like that. But, it's like, people are so touchy these days. I mean, it's the old, it's not really a joke, but 2 generations ago, young men were leaving their families to go and fight in world wars.
Exactly.
Right? And now people are upset if you don't call them by the correct pronoun. And it's like, come on, and my opinion's coming through a little bit, but it's, we have softened as a world. And listen, there's still some pretty tough places in the world. Don't get me wrong. Totally. But in a kind of a free democratic society like we live in here in the Philippines and sort of the Western world type thing, people have gotten a lot softer. And so when they fail, they don't get up as quickly. And so I think that's one of the things that I try and do in how I lead people is teach people how to fail forward.
Yeah. Amazing.
I'm the first person to apologize for a mistake.
Yep.
And I'm the first to admit, hey, we didn't do it right. Let's change it.
Yeah.
Rather than, how are we going to, it's like, okay, you failed. Welcome to life. This is what we do.
Exactly.
Fail. But there's this concept of failing forward. You actually, and listen, any great organization will tell you the only reason why they became great is because of their failures.
Yep, because of their mistakes.
They worked out, that doesn't work, let's try something else. It's very rare. I don't know if I've ever met anyone that's never made a mistake.
Yeah, no one.
You grow by the mistakes that you make. You just pray they're not big enough that they kill you. That's the problem.
Totally. We'll get back to talking about great leaders in just a moment, but there's this thing that we talk about in church, which is self-discipleship that we're big at. Maybe for someone listening for the first time, can you talk a bit about that? Because I think that is the one thing that will really help people grow.
Yeah, that probably goes back to a little bit. If I had to increase my thought on the hunger and drive, it would sort of come under that.
Yeah,
self-discipleship really is. You're taking it upon yourself to make sure that you're discipled. And what it is it's the difference between a child and an adult. A child puts out its hand and waits for mom and dad to feed. A child does not work for their food, hopefully. does not work. They are fed. They are led.
Exactly.
They sit and they receive and they follow the leader. If an adult is still doing that, either they've got the worst parents in the world because they're still doing it in their 20s and 30s, and it's like, yo, grow up, get a job, or they they're just going to fail in life because they have no concept of how, obviously it's a result of the parenting sometimes, but they have no concept of how to take care of themselves. And so, in a Christian context, we call it self-discipleship, in that it's our mandate to go out and make disciples, as what Jesus said. But sometimes in the church, what can happen is that people can get lazy, and they put their spiritual development and growth, the responsibility of that, in their leaders' hands. And I think that, take again our context of church, when someone first becomes a Christian, a leader must step in and take the responsibility of that new convert's faith and growth. That's what we must do. But the problem is, when we get used to that and we stay in that, the Bible talks about milk. And you give babies milk, but you need to wean them off. You need to give adults some meat. And so there needs to come a transition in every believer's life, and not just Christian, but when you go into a new job, someone's there to train you.
Exactly.
It's their responsibility to make sure you know what you're doing and to train you. But at some point, you have to flick the switch and go, okay, it's now my responsibility to make sure that I'm growing. And I think, in our church context, that's a big thing for me, because it puts the responsibility back on the Christian to say, no, I want to grow.
Yeah.
And it means that they go to God more. And it means that they don't have an excuse. They can't blame.
Totally.
Oh, my leader never taught me. Well, your leader had the same access to the same book that you have, called the Bible. And so, self-discipleship is massive, and it goes back to that hunger and drive.
Yeah.
Do you have a hunger? And so people in a church context that self-disciple have a hunger for Jesus. And so they're not waiting for church on a Sunday to get to know Christ. They're getting to know him throughout the week, and church is just a topping, it's the cherry on top of the cake. But those that don't have that, man, they're blaming everybody. They're victims. They never grow. They always blame the leader or the pastor or the church. They're always blaming. They're very victim.
I'm not being fed.
I'm not being fed. Totally. If your soil's good, the worst sermon will feed you.
Totally. Exactly.
But if your soil's bad, the best sermon won't feed you, and you'll just try and blame someone. Because you think it's their It's not their responsibility to feed you. It's your responsibility to come. And if there's food being offered, you come and get it.
Yeah.
But you got to grab it.
Totally.
I just think some Christians are just lazy. They're just like, I envision like a 600-pound fat, lazy person sitting there being fed grapes and complaining that it's not the specific ones, but they're not doing anything to improve their lives. And so that's why I think self-discipleship is really important, and in every part of your life, which comes back to you're only going to do it if you have a hunger. So if you want to get better in your job, self-disciple within your job to grow in your job, you have to have a hunger to do that, or else you'll never do it.
Totally. And in saying that, we're offering so many opportunities for people to grow, including this podcast. Listen to it.
This podcast is possibly the best thing as a church we do to help people grow in their leadership. There's nothing that comes close to this podcast.
That's very generous. We have Sunday services too. But let's get back to great leaders. I know you've hung out and you've talked and been mentored by a lot of great leaders. But can you give us a few things that great leaders have in common? Because I know that great leaders, they're not born great. They become great and they grow into their leadership and their influence. Can you give us just a few things that maybe they have in common?
I've talked a lot about it already.
Yeah.
They have the ability, the pain threshold. They have the ability to get up after mistakes. Some great leaders are not nice people.
Expound on that. That's a great thought.
I've had a question I ask it less now because I feel like I'm walking in it more. But when I was younger, one of the questions I would ask older guys that would make a lot of them feel uncomfortable was, how can I change the world without being a prick?
Wow.
Because unfortunately, I've hung out with a lot of great leaders that are not nice, and they get the job done. I'm talking about Christian, pastors, but they're just not nice. And there's an element here, and at the same breath as well, a leader's not best friends. Like, if you want to be a leader, you can't be everyone's best friend. If you want to be loved, greatest quote I've ever heard about leadership. If you want to be loved, go sell ice cream. Don't be a leader.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, leadership it's not going to win you a lot of friends, and that's why leaders are called out. And so that was one of my biggest questions that I always. So some leaders are actually just not nice. They're actually pricks, and they hurt people and they cycle through people. So they'll still. So don't always just look at the end result and say, "Wow, that's amazing," because sometimes how they got there wasn't great. And so there have been a few leaders that I've looked at and I've gone, okay, wow, there's elements of what they do that I love, but then there's other elements where it's like, no way, I hate that. And so, I'm kind of drawn to people that are really authentic, that are the same on the stage and off the stage.
You model that.
I try, because I like that in people, and so I think, but there is a drive. Every great leader has a drive. Every great leader has the ability to make tough decisions and have tough conversations.
And look at the big picture with you.
Big picture. This whole COVID thing, it's affected every individual person, but you got to look at the big picture. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't look at the big picture. And it's been really obvious in this whole COVID season. But these great leaders, they have the ability to see what others don't see, whether that's years into the future in their organization or in people around them, to see things that others don't see. There's people within our church that I've seen things in that other people haven't, and then it's become obvious and they've grown and they've done really well. And so, yeah, a great leader knows how to see things that others don't, that others don't see. But yeah, they make tough calls. They have to.
Super.
You got to fire some people sometimes.
Yeah, and that's tough.
It's in a church context, oh my gosh, because everyone thinks, hey, we're all family, we all love each other. But at the end of the day, if someone's not doing their job properly, you got to fire them.
Yeah, even for people who are not working for the church, like you gives a leadership position to someone and they don't do well.
Yeah, and that's almost harder sometimes because it's a volunteer.
And it's your friend.
Yeah, that's how you got to get really good at releasing them into their next season. It's never firing them; it's releasing them into the next season
to make your strengths fit your role better.
We need you in this other area.
Yeah.
Totally.
Talk to me a bit more about that. Not all leaders are nice. I really like that. But in saying that,
have you met leaders that aren't nice?
Yes. No, but in saying that, like they're not the traditional nice people that you encounter. That they're not all great leaders are gentle in their spirit. And I know a lot of leaders who are like tough on their words, like a coach, like our wakeboard teacher who is tough with how he teaches.
Well, I think it needs. I mean, who people are and then what it needs is always going to be different. So, for me, I know who I want to be because I've hung out with different people. So I look at it. So for me, which you would know better than anyone because you've experienced it the most, is that there is a softness to my leadership. Yet there are moments where I am not nice to you.
Yep.
From an outside perspective. There was a moment I called you out in front of the whole church a couple years ago for not doing your job properly, which nearly broke you. But I knew what I was doing and what did it do inside of you.
Yeah, I got it right.
Yeah, and it built you. It built you as a leader.
And I passed on the role to somebody else. Yeah,
you did. But that grew you. That one moment, I remember you meeting up with me a couple weeks later and going, when you said that, I was like, am I right? Should I quit? Am I doing the right thing? It made you question a whole bunch of stuff. But then you had a God moment, a God revelation. So you could look at that and go, that's not very nice, James.
Totally.
But the reason why I did that to you is because in the same breath, I'll give you a hug, I'll love on you. You know, my general demeanor is friendly. And
right.
my personality is I want to laugh.
That. Yeah, I love that.
And so there are moments, and you know this, where I'll go really strong. Doesn't mean that I'm not nice, but I'll go really strong. But I've seen people that treat, you know, volunteers or lower level leaders or something like that, just they treat them like they are a means to them being able to accomplish what they need to accomplish. Like, you're only here because I need you to accomplish what I want.
Yeah.
Whereas I always try and look at people and go, okay, listen, we got to get the job done, but I want you to grow as a person as well.
That's great.
Totally. And so there are leaders that don't think like that.
Yeah.
It's just like, all right, you didn't handle, next person, next one up. We'll cycle through, and they'll just keep cycling. And you'll see, I mean, you know, we've only had church staff on for a couple of years,
2 years.
But our retention rate's very high. There's a lot of churches that just cycle through people on staff. Their retention rate's horrible just because the work environment's not great. It's, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I feel like we've set a really good work culture here in a work environment. But yeah, there are just some people that aren't nice. You know, it's kind of like they preach. It's kind of like, okay, this is what it's like. It's like because like every great Christian leader has a spiritual side and a flesh side, right? Like every person. My goal is to try and close the gap as far as I can, as little as I can between my spiritual side and my flesh side. Some leaders I've been around, it's like you're in the holies of holies when they're operating in their spiritual side. And then you see like Satan himself come out when they're in the flesh. And it's like, you know, I mean, one of my funniest questions that I ask, unfortunately, is like, are you even a Christian? I don't ask it to their face. I ask it behind their back, of course. No, but I'm like, are you even how can, this is like so that. Not Christ. And I get we all make mistakes and we're stressed, but it's a pattern of behavior. It's not a one-off. There's been moments where I've reacted in my flesh, but to me, they're a one-off. They're not a pattern of behavior. So I'm judging. I'm not judging on a one-off. Never judge
on a one-off.
Statistics. You never look at this much information.
The outlier.
And then the outlier, and then make the whole, you know, assessment. You have to look at a pattern. And so I think
statistics. Huh?
Yeah, right. A little bit. I did it. But that's a great leadership concept. Super. Is from a Christian point of view, in a Christian context, but actually in any context, try and make the gap between your spirit side, your spiritual side, and your flesh side as little as possible.
That you don't swing as well.
Yeah, because when people swing, oh my gosh, you know, okay, so you're asking what type of leader. You know, I've seen leaders where people come in, and I've talked to our staff about this, they don't know who they're going to get that day.
Oh, yeah.
Are they going to get like the yelling side of the person? Are they going to get like
the jolly,
hey, let's have lunch together, buy everything? And it's like, it creates such instability in the staff. So that's one of the things that I've really tried to do as a leader is to let everybody, as much as I can, they know what they're going to get.
Yeah.
And I'm almost like to the point where if I'm in a bad mood, I'll tell everyone straight up, like, yo, I'm annoyed today. Just letting everybody know. So it's not like, oh, what's he going to be like today? It's like, no, I'm telling you what I'm going to be like today. But again, me having a bad day is an outlier. It's a one-off.
Yeah, totally.
Would you agree?
Absolutely.
I don't have a pattern of behavior. My pattern of behavior is generally, I'm in a great mood. Let's laugh. Let's have a lot of fun. While we work harder, and we can work hard and laugh. That's my pattern. So when I do have a bad day, everybody has grace for me. Because
your pattern is this.
and as well, I'm usually quite open about why I'm having a bad day.
You share
like,
about
there's
it.
stuff going, there's this happened, I'm annoyed or this, that.
And I'd even add that to what great leaders have in common. It's stability.
That you
super.
Have. You don't want to be a swinging pendulum.
Yeah, exactly.
If the people that work for you don't know what they're going to get, they're going to struggle to work for you. And that's why you have a high turnover with some leaders, because the people just can't handle it. They can't. Who am I going to get today?
Yeah.
It's almost like a bipolar. And I'm not making light of the disease of bipolar because it's real, but it's almost like a bipolar leader where it's like, who the hell am I getting today?
Yeah, exactly. You know, Pastor James, I grew up watching great leaders and just observing great leaders, and I know you did too. And I had this moment where I'm like, even with you, when I first attended Metro Walk, a service in Metro Walk, I'm like, oh, I want to be like him.
Yeah.
And then I want to dream big. I want to do this and that. But also have those moments where I'm like, but I don't have the talents that he has. I don't have the opportunities that he has or he had in the past. And so can you talk to us a bit about that tension of dreaming big, yet starting small?
Yeah, I mean that's a great topic because I've lived
Yeah, exactly.
massively. I was just talking with my parents the other day about it, about how, you know, when I was younger in ministry, I was working for my parents. My older sister and I were on staff, and it was just us. And we would go to conferences, and I would see all these other churches with all these teams, and they'd be hanging out in hotel rooms together at conferences, having fun. And it was like me and my older sister and my parents. And I love my parents, but I hated it because it was like, and my dad we'd go to these conferences and my dad would catch up with all these dudes that he was friends with years ago or Bible college, or they grew up together. And I'm like, I'm never going to have that. I'm never going to get that. And it really hurt me a lot. Like, wow. I thought I'm never going to do that. We were in a small church, you know, it wasn't really growing. How's this going to do it? But what's been amazing is, I think I'll give the overarching concept and then kind of finish with the story, is that when you're looking at other people going, I want to be like that, but I don't have this, I don't have that. Firstly, you don't know their story. You know, because even let's just say from a ministry point of view, the pastor's kid that has it all.
Yeah.
So my children in the next 25 years will be given a greater opportunity than anybody else in our church.
Yeah.
Not because of nepotism, but because they're allowed to come in and jump on their senior pastor's bed and give him a kiss, and you're not.
Yeah. And I won't.
Yeah, I appreciate it if you didn't. So the reality is that people will look at my children, right, and they'll go, wow, you've had the, you know, like the son or daughter of a business owner. Yeah, of course, you were there.
Yeah.
But people will not see the price that my children will pay.
Exactly.
And I will always honor my kids. And of course, they're going to get a leg up. And of course, I want to give them a leg up. But as well, people will falsely accuse them of having it easy. They have no idea the weight and the burden that my kids will carry over the next 20 years. Right. And so the first thing is, don't just look at the highlight reels and the Instagrams. You don't know. You know, I heard a message from a pastor maybe about 7-8 years ago, who is a world-renowned pastor, amazing. Everyone wants to be him. And he preached a message on, I think it was like the 10 giants that nearly killed me. Phenomenal.
Yeah, amazing.
Because you're sitting there and it's like, it was to a group of youth and young adult leaders, right? So we're all young and hungry. We're like, yeah, we're going to be the best. But he said the message was so confronting. I went away, and I know other people went away and went, wait, do I really want to be like that guy?
Do I want to pay that?
Do I want to pay the price that he has paid to get to where he is?
Wow.
And so, firstly, don't just look and go, oh yeah, there, you know, especially from a ministry point of view, the pastor's kid is the one that's probably the easiest to look at, but you don't know the pressure, man. You don't know what comes under.
Even just for preachers, like I personally looked up to preachers like when I was younger, like, oh, I want to do that. But I had no idea what it took and the burden of that. And now carrying that burden, sometimes when I preach, I'm like, people have no idea who they want to be.
Yeah, none. And you don't know it until you're walking in it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so everyone's got an opinion and a comment on it until you're actually in it. So here's what's cool about it is this. You got to remember that your life is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Amazing.
And again, I heard a preacher. See, like I've got all these great thoughts. They didn't come from books. They came from preachers that, you know, that have really shaped me. But a preacher called Wayne Alcorn in Australia, he said something years ago. I would have been maybe 21 when I heard this story. And it impacted me because it was right where I was at. And he said, when I started off in ministry, I started off with a bunch of other guys, and we were all running the race, and there was a couple of guys that sprinted ahead, and they looked great, they looked awesome. And right at that point in my life, I was young in ministry, and I'd seen a couple of guys in my age kind of sprint ahead, and I was like,
wow.
And this does sound arrogant. And again, listen, a characteristic of any great leader is that they have confidence.
Yeah.
Sometimes misconstrued as arrogance.
Exactly.
But you got to have confidence, or else why,
Exactly. Preach about it.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if I can do it. Well, then don't do it. Step aside and let someone who knows they can do it right. Sometimes we get.
You have to be humble.
It's false humility.
Yeah,
where
exactly.
it's like, it's all God. It's not me. It's, I don't really want to do it, but God's making me. No, if you can't do it, step aside and let someone that knows they can do it right. So I'm looking at what I'm hearing this, I'm 20, 21, and I'm going, yeah, I know I'm better than that guy, right? And it's like, again, could be arrogant, but as well, there's a bit of confidence in it, right? And it's not, there's a fine line,
true.
But there is. I'm like, I know I got it. Like, I know I can do this. But the situation where I was at, I wasn't doing it. And so this preacher said, some guys would run ahead, they'd look good. And he goes, I never sprinted, but I just kept running. Then all of a sudden, before I knew it, I'm looking around. Some of the guys I started with had fallen off.
Yeah.
But I just kept running. And then some of those guys that sprinted, I saw them on the side of the road, panting and out of breath, and I just kept running. And he goes, and now I look around, and this guy, I think, became the president of the movement that I was a part of. Because now I look around, and it's not that I was better than anyone. It's just that I kept running. And as a 21-year-old, I'll never forget I hearing that story. And that shaped me so much, because it wasn't like I was going, I'm going to run past you one day. But it really put inside of me this sense of the ministry walk and journey is a marathon.
Yeah.
It's not a sprint.
Yeah.
So even when I came to start this church in the Philippines, there was a couple of my peers that started churches at the same time. One of them said the stupidest thing I've ever heard. He said, yeah, if my church, he was a successful young adults pastor, and he thought that, running a department meant he could run a church, which is
totally
funny.
Different.
And he goes, man, if I don't have 500 people in the first year, it's a fail. And I remember hearing that going, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because you're putting yourself under pressure.
Yeah.
You're going to cut corners to get there. I remember coming out here, and one of the things I said a lot 5 years ago, and I still say it a lot, is I don't want to change the world in 5 years. Give me 50 years.
Come on.
And so what it does is it means I'm thinking long term.
Yeah,
I'm thinking where this is going. And so it's not a sprint. This ministry. Now, there's been aspects of our church where it looks like it's been a sprint, but I promise you, for me, it's felt like a marathon.
No. From the outside, people can say, oh,
wow, it's a sprint. No, it's been a marathon. I'm telling you, it is every step of the way. We've grown fast in some areas, but it's been a marathon. And so for me, now I look around, some of those guys that I started with when I was 20, I'm looking around, and it's like, yeah, that's cool, but I'm so glad I'm doing what I'm doing. And being in that small church setting, right? It helped me, because I taught myself how to do sound. I taught myself how to lead worship. I ran a youth group, and then taught myself IT. Like, because I didn't have this great team, I had to teach myself everything. And so what I thought I lacked was actually God using that to instill something in me.
So good.
And then God gave me, and this is what I was talking to my parents about the other day. God's so kind to me, because he did let me meet some people in my world that now have become my greatest of friends. And so two of my friends in Australia now pastor a guy called Dustin Bell and Jonathan Gula.
Yeah.
John O'Gula will end up being the leader of his denomination in maybe the next decade, which is a large denomination in Australia. And Dustin pastors one of the biggest churches in Australia. And if he wanted to, he could end up leading the denomination one day. And these are two of my best friends. We have a chat group that, these are the friends that just last week, one of them called me up and said, hey, I'm having a tough day. I'm about to walk into this meeting. Can you just pray with me? That is the best of friend that you could have. And they weren't in my church. I was jealous of my dad. I never thought I'd had that, but it kind of just naturally happened because I was humble and I put God first and I just served God.
Yeah.
And so now I've got some friend, Pastor Jeremy Seward in Singapore, pastors an amazing church. Again, one of my best friends. And that just relationship came out of nowhere. I didn't strive for it. I wasn't weird about it. And these are guys now that I'm going to run with for the next 40 years of my life, that when I'm 60, 70, we'll be able to laugh about how we were in our 20s. And that to me is so precious. And so, but it's when you look at life like a marathon and not a sprint.
Amazing.
And I think that in all our leadership, that's what you got to look at. Like and everyone wants to change the world.
Totally.
Awesome. You're not going to do it in 5 years.
Exactly.
It took Steve Jobs, 30 odd years to build the iPhone?
The first iPhone, yeah. Amazing.
He did some good stuff before that, but he failed.
Yep.
Miserably.
Michael Jordan with all the missed shots, missed game winners.
Yeah, got cut from his high school basketball team.
That's your favorite story.
Oh, let's go MJ. But then the next
that's
year he did grow like a foot, so that does help.
Totally. But you actually told me this story of the marathon 3 years ago, if you remember in your house, and you said this one line that really stuck out to me. It's just keep showing up.
Yeah, actually, I do remember that line.
Yeah. So
everyone always asks me about church. You know, what can I do to serve? How can I be better? That's actually one of my go-to lines. Is just keep showing up.
Yep. And that's what you did.
Yeah.
And
there's a difference between being a shooting star and like a burning bush, right? So the shooting star looks good for a moment, but it goes. You know, that burning bush of Moses and the presence of God, it stayed burning. It was there for a while. And
that's
so
right.
I'm very wary of shooting stars. You know, like we've had some people in the pandemic came out, started serving. It's like, wow, yeah, amazing. I'm like, yeah, cool. Just give it a little bit of time. And then there's other guys within our team. I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, guys like AJ Flores and Kobe who just kept showing up every week. Angelo, who's right here doing the things, just kept showing up every week. And
exactly.
And that's what builds great organizations is people that keep showing up, not people that look flashy and look good and they make a splash, but when that splash is over, they're done.
Exactly. So, and that's what you did. And I think what you did is you made the most out of what you had.
Yeah.
And that's what got you all the opportunities. I heard this great line, said, opportunity presents itself to those who are prepared. Yeah. And that's what you did. I learned that from Haikyuu. Great anime. So I think that's a great thought, Pastor James. Not only do we want to grow and we want other people to grow, but we want to help others grow. And you are such an empowering leader. I mean, you've empowered me with opportunities that I think I don't even deserve at that time, but you believed in me. Can you talk to us a bit about empowering people?
Yeah, well, if you want to move past where you are, you have to empower people.
Amazing.
If you don't empower people, you will only grow to a certain level. And so you've got to not only empower people, but you've got to teach the people that you lead an empowering culture. So again, from a church concept, we've always talked about how we're not the church where you get to have dinner every week with the senior pastor. Not because I'm a bad guy.
You can't.
Well, I can. Our church will only be 200 people.
Totally.
And it will stay that way. And that's all it will be. And so I always knew that our church was called to be a larger church and an influential church. And so ever since the beginning of the church, the fabric of the culture was, I want the pastor to pray for me. Nope. That leader has the same spirit that raised Christ from the dead, so they can pray. And so of course I'll pray, right? It's not like I'm some weirdo, but the reason why I may not pray for someone is not because I'm mean, but it's because I want to teach them that every person has the spirit of Christ inside of them. And if you're just relying on the pastor, we're only going to have a church of 200 people. And we're not going to see the influence that we want to see. We're not going to reach the world the way we want to reach. Now, some people are cool with that. And there's some people that need that or that want that. And so they'll be in that church. And so I'm not speaking negatively against that. But it is a reality that if you want to to grow bigger and larger, you have to empower. And so for me, what it means is taking my hands off stuff. So there's things that happen. I'm like, oh, gee, I wouldn't have done that. But I'm an empowering leader. And so I'm always looking at collateral damage.
Yeah, that's right.
So as a leader, I'm looking at, okay, if I give them a responsibility and they do it wrong, how much collateral damage is going to happen? And I'll look at it and I'll go, okay, if it's too much, like the collateral damage is like death, then I won't give them that leadership yet or that responsibility. If it is, listen, we can handle a few shrapnel wounds.
We can catch it.
Yeah, we can do it. Then I'm much more willing to lead them and do that. So,
Amazing.
From a really practical point of view, like I'll let someone MC a service, right? I'll let them do the first little section first before I give them the big section. Because if they ruin the first little section, that's okay.
We can save it.
And I'll put a strong person on the second one that, like, if they don't do well, the second person is going to come up and do it. If I'm letting them if I switch it the first time doing the big section, I'll put a stronger one at the beginning, and I'll preach, because I know that even if they start like praying out the prayer and start saying the wrong theology in their prayer, at least I can get up after and be like, hey, man, God's good. Hey, what you just heard before, that's wrong. But this is actually the truth of the word. You know what I'm saying? And so,
Totally.
So empowering is not just like, here, everyone do everything. A great leader is always looking at the potential collateral damage of what they are allowing to be empowered.
Amazing.
And you're assessing. And so there's some things that I haven't given you that you don't know, because I'm looking at it going, nah, he's not ready. It's not there. You'd slay some people. The damage would be too big.
Yeah.
But then there's other things. Everything I've given you or anybody else, I've looked at it and gone, if they ruin it, we can fix it.
Yeah, totally. That's a great thought. And you are very empowering. And again, the culture in our church, which is we have an empowering culture, is so good, because I really believe that you can have growth or you can have control, but you cannot have both.
No. Well, I have seen it done, but the person that's controlling has zero life. I want to hang out with my kids and my family. They don't.
Totally.
So they do control a lot. But and as well, with empowerment comes accountability. So when I empower you, like when I empower you to do something, if you do it wrong, I'm going to let you know.
Yeah. And you do.
Yeah, like empowerment's not just like, hey, do whatever you want. No, I'm empowering you. Here's the parameters that we have and the boundaries. And if you don't do it well, I'm gonna turn around and let you know that it's not done well. And so an empowerment is not this loose culture where I'm sitting in the senior pastor's office going, oh my gosh, my church is becoming something I didn't want it to be. No way. If I empower you and you do it outside of the boundaries that I want the church to go, I'm going to cut it straight away. And I'm going to, we're going to deal with that straight away to make sure it doesn't go down that path.
Amazing.
So some people might mistake empowerment for laziness or just releasing everything. No. I'm empowering, but I've given you some clear guidelines within the empowerment.
Yeah, totally. And we empower people not just so we can develop the organization or the church. We empower them so that they can grow.
Oh, absolutely. And that's our goal, is to grow people as well.
Totally.
That's why I said you're not here you're not just a means to an end so that I can achieve what I want to achieve. Listen, I need to still achieve it, but I want you to grow as a person as we're achieving it together.
And to me, seeing someone grow as I empower them, nothing's more rewarding.
Oh, it's fantastic. And, like in the last 2 years, we've gone from one staff member to now 20-something. I don't even know how many we got. 23 or 24, something like that. And it is made there are some things that I've empowered people that have actually made my life easier.
Yeah, totally.
But there's other things, because I've empowered, I've been able to then focus on other things.
Yeah.
And do it. So empowerment, it's awesome. If you can get it right,
exactly.
It's very good.
And you empower people who have initiative. I think that's a key thing that you have. And I also want to say to all our leaders watching this, if you want to do something, don't be afraid to tell your leader, hey, can I do this? Would you be okay with doing this? Because I sometimes do that with the things, and you're very collaborative and all that.
Yeah, but the reason why I listen to you is because I know your heart and your humility.
That's right.
So if you're going to do that, you better have the right. Well, no. Okay, this is as simple as it is. If that's great advice, but let me give you the boss advice. Go. Only do that if you're prepared to hear a no, and your spirit is still good.
Yep. Totally.
If you can't handle a no, then don't do it. Go away and grow and become a tougher person.
And check your motives.
Yeah, check your motives. If you can't handle a no, like, hey, I was thinking, I was praying, I want to do this, and whoever's in charge, your leader, your boss, your pastor says, no, I don't think so. What? How come he's not here for? Well, no, I would check your heart. So when you come to me, there are I let you do that because I know your heart, and I know that you're okay if I give you a no.
Totally.
And so I've said yes to a lot of the stuff you say because I've actually said no to a lot of the stuff you say.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great tip that
like
might have saved me from a lot of shoot.
Your first name that you wanted to do.
That's right. Maybe let's end with this, Bas.
It was a horrible name. That's another story.
We have a great name now, but
for another time.
Let's end with this. If you were a young adult or a leader in 2021.
I'm still a young adult. No, I'm not.
In 2021, how would you approach this year so that you can be the best version of yourself?
I think everything we just talked about. I don't know what else you want me to say. No, I think, okay, if you want to approach a year, what are your goals? What are your goals for this year?
Right.
So, we always look at our New Year's resolutions and everything that we want to do, but I think the art of goal setting has been lost a little bit.
Wow.
So it's as simple as, what do I want to achieve this year? And then how can I achieve it? And then following through on that.
Yeah.
I want to be fit this year. Awesome. Great goal. What does that look like? I want to be fit. No, that's not the correct answer. The correct answer is I'm going to join a gym. I'm going to get a workout buddy. I'm going to work so I can have money to join the gym. You get what I'm saying? So the goal is, I want to be closer with Jesus. Cool. That's a nice, pretty goal. We all want to be closer with Jesus. What does that mean? Okay, I'm going to do FLC Leadership College, or I'm going to serve more, or I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to do a reading plan. I'm going to, So I think as a young adult, it's set your goals and what do you want to achieve this year? Whoever's listening to this, you're the only one that knows what you want to achieve. But whatever that is, set the goal and then work backwards and go, how can I achieve this goal? What do I need to do? Who do I need to cut out of my life? What do I need to spend less here? Do I need to do this? I think that's the easiest thing. People don't set goals. And if you don't set a goal, where are you heading? What are you doing?
So good.
You're just you're like a boat without a rudder. You just go wherever the wind blows. But a goal gives you a rudder.
So good. Well, thank you, Pastor James. That was so insightful. Probably one of the most insightful podcasts that we have. Well, we only had 3.
Was it the or one of? I mean, who am I up against? Liz and Woolham?
Liz and Woolham. Okay,
they're pretty good.
You can have the.
They're good.
they're good as well.
We all have different strengths.
Super powerful. But thank you, Pastor James. I hope you learned a lot from that. Take everything that we said and he said mostly and apply that in your life. And I hope that you have the best year ahead. See you next month on Grow, Lead, Go.